Hey everybody, welcome back to Bug Puller Tater 40K. I know it's been a while since I recorded another video, just unfortunately life got in the way and I really didn't even play any events, and I have a unfortunate confession to make. I did play an event a couple weeks ago, but I did not take my GSC. I played my Necrons, and what's even worse is I only went 2-1 with my Necrons, which I feel like I could have just done with my GSC. But it was cool to play an army that's, I wouldn't say they're overpowered right now. Definitely not after seeing the Leagues of Votann releases. But I think they have a 53% win rate right now, but there's no arguing that their secondaries are just way too easy to score. So it felt nice going to a tournament and not having to think too hard what was going on the table. I could just exist and know my resiliency was going to get me through a lot of tough situations, and know that even if I played terribly, I could score 85 points, which is not something you get with GSC. And actually playing the Necrons really made me appreciate playing the GSC, because I felt great. I went to Buffalo Wild Wings after the tournament, after the 3 games. I didn't feel drained like I feel sometimes after I play GSC, because there was not a lot of brain power going into my games. I just know with the Silent King, if I took Code of Combat, Purge Vermin if you're not that fast, and Ancient Machineries or Treasure of the Eons if the objectives worked out for it, and away we went. But I still, like you said, I went 2-1. I came in like 9th because I had such a bad loss against Goth Orcs, because I wasn't thinking in my second game about how I was going to win. I just let a whole Goth Orcs army wog into me, basically. So after this tournament, I'll go back to my GSC. I had a good break from them, and I'll start to make some more regular content. This week, I actually wanted to talk about a list that I saw a little while ago that somebody on the GSC Facebook group is doing really well with, and it's the Deep Supplies Neophyte spam list. And there's no doubt this GSC player is a better GSC player than me. He's like won events with GSC, which I have not done, and I think he actually has won an event with this list, so I thought it'd be cool to go over it and how I think it works, just from seeing how I've played it a little bit, and how, a lot of us were looking at Twisted Helix, and we were looking at other lists more melee focused, and this guy comes out of nowhere with a Neophyte list with mining, with seismic cannons he was using, or some people could use mining lasers, and not even in 20-man squads, which is what a lot of people were doing, just something out of left field, and it was successful, so I thought it'd be cool to take a look. Alright, so the list, we're not going to go over in a specific list. We're going to go over some of the main points of how you build this type of list, and you can fill it out with the models that you might have in your collection. The person that was using it over on the Facebook group that was posting, he's using a ton of Neophytes, like a brigade's worth. It's like 120 Neophytes with seismic cannons. My version actually uses mining lasers and just 60 Neophytes, but it's kind of the same build. And so we'll go over each point and how you can build into this type of list, and maybe it's not the exact same thing, but it's doing the same things on the table. So it starts off with, you're going to take a custom cult with Deep Supplies, Industrial Affinity, and a custom to Turmoil. The Deep Supplies is going to let you reroll one of those wound rolls when you're attacking in melee or shooting, more importantly for this list. And the Industrial Affinity obviously lets you ignore any negative modifiers for any of your industrial weapons, which is important to make sure you're actually hitting with those industrial weapons so you get the benefit of the wound reroll. And the custom to Turmoil is, a 1-point mini transhuman, which I think is the best 1 point that you can throw in with this, because you're going to have a ton of toughness 3 models. So anything at strength 6 and above is still wounding you on 3-ups, which actually comes up a lot in the game. Accustomed to Turmoil is not that great on toughness 4 models like your Acolytes, but with this list being just so many Neophytes at T3, it really is the best 1 point that you can throw in there at the end. So like I said before, the list is a brigade, and that is just so you can maximize your amount of CP you're going to start with, and the amount of troop slots that you have to take those Neophytes with the industrial weapons. And in the HQ slot, I'm taking a Patriarch, a Magus, and a Primus. The Primus is obvious there for the rerolls to wound and to get the reroll ones to hit. So with a Crossfire, you're getting Neophytes hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, so you're really only missing on those 2s, which is a big deal when you're shooting mining lasers with just the 2 shots per squad of 10. And with seismic cannons, even though they have more shots, it's still a big deal because then you're getting rerolls on the more shots when you roll those 1s. The Patriarch and the Primus. The Patriarch, I know a lot of people aren't as excited about these days. He's very expensive for what he does. The Magus casts, the same powers, and he's cheaper. But I find in the secondary game, you just have to have access to that Psychic secondary tree, and you have to run 2 Psychers in order to feel comfortable doing that, at least in my eyes. So that's why I'm bringing the Patriarch, mainly so I can run things like Psychic Interrogation and not feel like if this Magus dies and he's my only Psyker on my list, I'm going to lose. And then obviously the Magus is there to be that second Psyker and a cheaper Psyker. In the troop slot, I just straight have 6 units of 10 Neophytes. In my list, it actually has mining lasers. On the person on the Facebook group who obviously won a tournament, they were using seismic cannons, so you make your own choice, I guess. The reason I'm taking mining lasers is, yes, it's only 2 shots, it's a strength 9 with d6 damage, but I have 12 of those shots, and later in the list you'll see there's more mining lasers coming in for my list. Rerolling anything but a 2 is going to hit, and then I'm rerolling 1 of the wounds, so hopefully both of those hit, and then I'm rerolling any wounds that miss, or 1 wound that misses. And that d6 damage, yeah, it's really swingy, but I have a ton of it, so math works out. For example, I played a Black Templars player with, he didn't have any big threats on the table. He had a lot of assault and intercessor squads, sword brethren, things like that, which you would think seismic cannons would be better into. But I actually really moved away from the seismic cannons, especially into things with armor contempt. Because of their low AP, it feels real bad shooting those guns into things like Sanguinary Guard, or anything with armor contempt. Now with Leagues of Votann coming out, seismic cannons are going to feel very bad. So I moved on to the mining lasers. When I get those 2 shots through, I know I'm at least killing those 2 models, and I have so many of those shots in my army that it turns into a bunch of shots like I had before with the seismic cannon. So the other troop slots are actually filled up by melee threats, because your GSC list can exist as just Neophytes. It's just too easy in the game to clear out the Neophytes and kill them as they come down from called ambush, or just move fast into them and murder them before they can really use their superior numbers to run away with the score on the mission. So I take units of Acolytes for this, obviously, with the mining weapons, and I am just taking the 2 units of 5 to perform secondary actions, which probably I should take out to put more Acolytes in, and the 1 unit that has a Trap Sprung for a better charge and some rock drills to get some of those morals off on 1 target. And that unit is really there to tell my opponent about, hey, I have this unit, it does a bunch of mortals when it comes in, has a 3d6 pick the 2 highest charge, so he knows I have a melee threat. He can't just come and charge into my 60 Neophytes and not have any consequences because of it. Then for the elite slot, I actually kept this extremely cheap. We're just taking 3 more characters, a Kellermorph with the Wormtooth rounds, a Reductus Saboteur, and a Nexos to help out that Primus to get the buffs over the table. The Reductus Saboteur is pretty good if there's monsters and vehicles on the table, and it feels real bad if there's not. I'll be honest, it's just a cheaper character. This could be a Sanctus for a little sniping, which might be interesting. But I actually, as far as the Kellamorph, I wasn't that impressed originally, but now playing with the Kellamorph a little more with these Wormtooth rounds, his ability to just shoot and move, I finally caught up to the rest of the GSC community and thinking like, oh, this guy's awesome. It feels bad paying 80 points for him. I think he should still be a little cheaper, but he actually is pretty good. So you'll notice that this list does come in with 6 characters, which all of my opponents key in on immediately and realize, wow, this is a lot of assassinate points. But all these characters are totally happy chilling behind my 60 Neophytes, behind my Acolytes, and behind the other things that you'll see that are in the list. So these things shouldn't be out in the front scrapping it up like the Patriarch or the Primus, or the Kellamorph shouldn't get too close to anything that he can't be behind Neophytes. So if you've killed all my Neophytes, I'm probably going to lose anyway if you get your assassination points. In the fast attack slot, we have just 2 cheap units of Jackals of 4 with a demo charge each. Really great move blockers. The demo charge actually can do some damage if I needed to. And then 3 bridge runners with the mining lasers and flares to sit behind all of this and just shoot my opponent with more mining lasers. And last but not least on the list is 3 rock runners with heavy mining lasers, so D3, little mini las cannon shots each. And these guys have been absolutely awesome for me as, again, an additional melee threat that not a lot of opponents see coming because they're fast, they have good attacks. Into armor contempt, their AP isn't great, but I'm not looking for them to kill a ton. I'm looking to them to keep them out in front of my Neophyte gun line and keep things off my Neophytes, which they've done a great job of. So now for the actually really important thing is how this list plays in the secondary game. As far as primary, it's pretty obvious. There's a ton of OBSEC in this list. There's the Acolytes that are going to come, one of them, the 5-man squad's lying in wait, can steal a primary from your opponent. There's a ton of Neophytes that can come down within 8, shoot, and then charge on a primary objective just to hope a few will survive if your opponent doesn't leave OBSEC on an objective, which I definitely did. Some of my Black Templar opponent that I was playing, he had a Chaplain on a back objective, and yeah, sure, that Chaplain was going to kill 4 or 5 Neophytes, but I really don't care as long as 2 Neophytes survive. I hold that objective because he just didn't have as many models as me and needed his other bigger OBSEC models somewhere else to hold off my Acolytes and my Rock Grinders and to come and get into my gun line so I'm not just shooting him for 5 turns. So stealing primary with this list is the name of the game for sure. You should score your max primary with so many bodies unless you're getting absolutely tabled. But as far as the secondary, you have to be careful because you definitely give up a ton of no prisoner points, and you're going to give up a ton of assassinate points if you're not careful, or grind them down points if you're playing something like Knights. So you have to know that in at least those categories, you could give up a lot of points, so you're going to need to score a lot of points as well. The good thing about this list is you can score a lot of points in Brood Swarm. It's going to be tough for, especially armies in the meta right now, to have more models anywhere on the table than you if you want to, bring up some ambushing Neophytes anywhere. I've scored 15 routinely with this list, and especially the other list that I saw with even more Neophytes, I'm sure that is Brood Swarm is taking every game. Then we can look at something like R&D. There's just so many troops that can do it in this list. That is 12 every single time. It's just sad that you can't get 15 doing R&D, but I understand why. And now your third secondary really comes in a flex spot that you need to be careful because you're going to need to score good points on this because other opponents are going to be able to pick a good third secondary as far as no prisoners against you or assassinate and get decent points. So something like Psychic Interrogation, if you know your opponent has aggressive characters and they can't just hide their characters in the back the entire game from you, is perfect. You're going to have enough turns where your characters are safe if you protect them well enough with those Neophyte squads, where you're going to score a 12 or 15 on Psychic Interrogation against aggressive characters in the opponent's army. But say you're playing somebody like Tau who has a ethereal or a commander that just doesn't need to come anywhere near you, and Psychic Interrogation might not be the greatest thing in the world because while you do want to move towards that Tau player to take primary points, you don't really want to risk your characters anywhere that their screens can be cleared by crisis suits and then they can be shot off the table. So then I would start to look at things like ambush. With a list like this and the changes to the ambush secondary, it's very easy to set up crossfire and exposed units to get you those extra points all throughout the game. And because this is such a heavily shooting focused list, and you know you're going to want to remove things from the table with that shooting, you might as well get rewarded with it by taking the ambush secondary. Alright everybody, I hope that quick list overview will help some of you out, maybe play some different lists other than a melee focused GSC list and really tech into the shooting. I know before I kind of looked at GSC shooting like not the most optimal way to play the army, but it's definitely been proven by other people, and I've experimented with this type of list myself now. This is a totally viable way to play GSC, and even with the meta the way it is now, which is kind of the healthiest meta we've had probably in all of 9th edition, now's the time to get out there and play your GSC and experiment a little bit and see what you can get done before Leagues of Votann come out, because they look effing bonkers. And before I close up, I just want to say I write over on some articles over on FLG. I'll try and do some more GSC focused content under the Bug Proletariat name. And if you guys want to check out the articles, feel free. Some of the ones were about Conquest, a newer game that I'm getting into, a fantasy war game. If there's any interest in that, feel free to let me know. I would be happy to make some videos. But I'll definitely keep the channel more GSC focused still. And my next tournament, unfortunately, is not going to be till like December. So I'll be covering, maybe I'll do some more battle reports, because that actually had I got pretty good feedback when I put out just the one that I had time to do so far. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. And until next time, I hope you all win some games of the GSC out there.